Today's narrator, Saleh, recalls a time when his family was invited to a wedding in a city far from where they lived. Since flights weren't an option, they decided to travel by car instead. The group included Saleh's father, his mother, his younger sister, and their baby brother, who was just a few months old. Saleh, who was the oldest, was about 16 or 17 years old at the time. Not quite a child, but still young enough to feel out of place in serious conversations. They knew the trip would take a long time, and like most people, they wanted to find a way to shorten it. That's when Saleh's father made a decision, one that Saleh and the entire family would never forget. Instead of taking the main road, his father insisted on a shortcut he'd heard about. Saleh, being young, didn't really understand what was being said at the time, but he remembers bits and pieces of the conversation. His mother had been against it. "Why don't we just take the regular road?" she asked, clearly uneasy. "It's safer and we'll avoid trouble." But his father shrugged her off, his tone confident. No, this road is much faster. There's nothing to worry about. People love to make up stories and scare each other over nothing." What Saleh would come to realize later was that this shortcut had a reputation. People said it was abandoned and strange things happened there. It was the kind of road you'd rather not drive down, especially at night. And it was night when Saleh's family took that road. At first, everything seemed normal. The car's headlights cut through the darkness as they drove, and the only sound was the hum of the engine. Hours passed, and then something happened that Saleh will never forget. Out of nowhere, they saw someone running in the middle of the road. It was a man. He seemed panicked and disoriented, as if he had been in some kind of accident. Saleh's mother gasped, her voice filled with concern. "Stop the car! That man might need help!" But Saleh's father shook his head firmly, his face tense. "No, I'm not stopping." "Why?" she demanded. "What if he's hurt? What if he needs us?" His father gripped the steering wheel tightly, his voice low and uneasy. "I don't know. Something doesn't feel right. There's a heaviness on this road. I don't like it. After I heard my parents talking, I started feeling the same strange unease they were describing. It was like the road was getting narrower the further we drove. It didn't feel like a main road anymore. It felt wrong. My mom kept insisting that we stop. "What if that man really needed help? We can't just leave him," she said. Finally, my dad gave in. He pulled the car over to the side of the road and stepped out to take a look. From the back seat, we watched as he glanced around, searching for any sign of the man we'd seen earlier. After a minute or two, he came back, shaking his head. "There's no one there. Maybe he walked off somewhere. Let's just keep going." So we did, but things only got stranger from there. My younger sister, who's a few years younger than me, started acting weird. She kept pressing herself against the car door as if trying to get as far away as possible from something. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but as time went on, I noticed she wasn't just leaning against the door, she was glued to it. I turned to her and asked, "What's wrong with you? Why are you sitting like that?" She didn't answer at first. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, but she stayed silent. I kept pushing, asking her what was going on until she finally whispered, That big man is pushing me against the door." I froze. "What big man?" I asked, my voice sharp with confusion. Before she could say anything else, my parents overheard us. My mom turned around in her seat, her face full of concern. "What's going on back there? What are you two talking about?" I quickly told her. "Mom, I don't know. My sister says someone is pushing her against the door." My mom's eyes darted to my sister. "What's wrong? Tell me what's going on." But my sister clammed up. She shook her head over and over, saying, "It's nothing. Nothing's wrong." No matter how much we pressed her, she wouldn't say another word. At that point, we tried to dismiss it. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe the weirdness of the road was getting to all of us. But as we kept driving, things started to spiral out of control. First, we began hearing strange noises. It sounded like footsteps, as if someone was walking on the roof of the car. You know that sound, right? The creaking, deliberate thuds of someone stepping on metal? That's what it was. We all heard it. My dad kept opening the car's sunroof, trying to look up, trying to see if someone was there. But every time, the roof was empty. No one was there, and yet the sounds didn't stop. Then came the screams. Out of nowhere, we'd hear this piercing scream echo through the air. It would come and go in a flash, fading as quickly as it appeared, leaving us stunned and confused. That's when my dad's demeanor changed. He started taking the situation seriously. The road was no longer just eerie. It felt hostile, as though something didn't want us there. And then it happened. The car lights began to flicker. The headlights dimmed and brightened as if they had a mind of their own. My dad gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to keep calm. Suddenly, the car shut off completely. The engine died, and we were left sitting there, stranded in the middle of the road, surrounded by nothing but darkness and silence. The moment the car stopped and the headlights went out, my baby brother, who had been peacefully asleep in my mom's arms the whole trip, suddenly began to cry. But this wasn't normal crying. It was a hysterical, shrieking wail, as if someone had pinched or hurt him badly. It sounded like he was in terrible pain. We were all on edge already, but the sound of his screaming made the tension in the car even worse. My sister sitting beside me started covering her ears and crying too, as though the sound itself was unbearable. I sat there frozen, trying to understand what was happening. My mother was terrified. She began reciting verses from the Quran, the ones she knew by heart, her voice trembling as she spoke. My father, trying to keep calm, said, "Everyone, calm down. Let's figure out what's wrong with the car. Maybe it shut off for some reason." He got out of the car to check. Meanwhile, I leaned toward my sister, trying to calm her down. "It's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of," I whispered. But she wouldn't stop pressing herself against the car door, her face pale and full of fear. After a few minutes that felt like forever, my dad finally got back into the car. He turned the key again and again until, finally, the engine roared back to life. Without saying a word, he drove forward. The rest of the ride was completely silent. None of us spoke. My mom sat there, softly reciting Quran to herself as she rocked my baby brother, trying to calm him down. My sister had quieted too, but I could tell by the look on her face that she was still terrified. A short distance later, we saw something strange. There was a light coming from a side road just up ahead. It stood out because the entire area around us was pitch black. So dark, it felt like the night itself was pressing in on us. Curious, my dad slowed down and steered the car toward the light. It turned out to be a car parked off to the side. Its headlights were on, glowing faintly in the darkness. My dad, being the good man he is, got out again. He thought maybe someone was stranded. Maybe they needed help. But what happened next, we'll never forget. Within moments, my dad came running back to the car, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. He jumped in, slammed the door shut, and started the car with shaking hands. Without saying a word, he sped off faster than I had ever seen him drive. None of us dared to ask what he saw. We were too afraid to know. Years later, when I was older, I finally asked my dad about that night. I asked him what he had seen by that car. My dad hesitated, then told me the truth. That burning car. It was exactly like our car. Same make, same model, same everything. And inside it, there were 4 people. A man, a woman, and 2 children. One of the children was a baby, just like your brother. And they were all dead, burned inside the car. My heart sank as he spoke. It was as if that scene had been a chilling reflection of us, our family. I also asked my sister, now grown up, why she had been so scared that night. She finally admitted what she had seen. "There was a man sitting between us in the back seat," she said. "He was huge, unnaturally big, so tall that his head was bent, pressing against the car's ceiling. He was so close to me and I could feel him pushing me against the door. I couldn't see his face, but his whole body was just black, black as night. Saleh finishes his story with a heavy voice. To this day, we can't forget what happened that night, and we've never gone back to that road again. And that brings us to the end of today's story. I hope you enjoyed it and that it sent chills down your spine. If you did, don't forget to like the video and show your support by subscribing to the channel. And hey, don't keep the scare to yourself. Share this story with your friends so they can experience it too. Your support helps us bring you more terrifying tales like this one. Thank you for sticking around till the end. I'm Phobia, and I'll see you in the next story.